Hi everyone. So our GRRR this week is on belief systems, which is a great topic, certainly one that's important to understand a lot of what happens in ninth grade, global. So you can see belief systems are the organized ways people practice religious faith or philosophical teachings. So a lot of times we associate belief systems with religion, which is true, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, but we can also associate the term belief system with philosophies like Confucianism, legalism, Taoism, and things like that. So you want to be open to both of those when you're looking at belief systems, and we'll see we have a little bit of both here on our worksheet. Okay, so again, you want to label the 7 continents and 5 oceans. Please make sure you have one of each. Not one of each, 7 continents and 5 oceans. Double check that you have them all labeled. And then you're going to draw an arrow to where each began. So the first religion on our list is Hinduism, and there's some key vocabulary here that you want to make sure you know. Reincarnation, caste system, karma. If you're not sure what those words mean, please look them up or ask your teacher. And Hinduism is native to India, so we're going to draw that arrow over to India. Next we have Judaism. Again, important vocabulary here, monotheistic, and 10 Commandments. Judaism started on the east coast of the Mediterranean Sea in the Fertile Crescent area. So we're going to head over there. So Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the land in between. Buddhism, again, important vocabulary, Eightfold Path, and that they reject the caste system. So again, if you're not sure what the caste system is, please look that up. Now, Buddhism also started in India, but up in the northeast corner of it. Today it's considered Nepal, and that's part of why Buddhism is able to spread so easily into East Asia. It has easy access to the Silk Roads and the Indian Ocean Trade Network. All right, Islam is the most recent religion. It is the youngest. You want to look at 5 pillars in Mecca, understand why Mecca is important. Mecca is here on the Arabian Peninsula. That's where it began, spread throughout the Middle East. And then these were all religions. And I pointed out to you before that belief systems can be both religions and philosophies. And Confucianism is a philosophy. That philosophy emphasized filial piety and was based in China. Now, China is sometimes hard to find on these maps. A lot of students want to put China here, but that is not China. That is actually Russia and parts of Mongolia, a hair bit of China today. But the major part of China is down in this area. And I always try to recognize it because of the bulge. So I noticed this bulge here, which kind of looks like this one, but what you need to keep track of is where Korea is. So this peninsula and this little island down here are in between the bulge of China. All right, if we take a look at the multiple choice questions, what do they say? One similarity between the 5 pillars of Islam and the 10 Commandments is that both. So again, that key vocabulary. So we need to know what these things are. And these things are rules. So the 5 pillars and the 10 Commandments are rules. So is there an answer that connects to rules? And I think when we look at D, a guide to proper behavior, that really reinforces the idea of rules to me. For number 2, what is one way in which animism, Shinto, and Taoism are similar? Now, we haven't looked at any of these, so I'd like to, in my head, be able to associate certain things with them. Taoism came out of China. It was a philosophy out of China and advocated studying nature in order to bring order back to China. It was came about during a very violent time. So if you followed nature, then you'd be able to end that violence. Shintoism is the native religion of Japan and involves the worship of nature spirits and ancestor spirits. And then we have animism. Shintoism is a type of animism. Animism is the worship of nature spirits that we really associate with all early religions, but specifically sub-Saharan Africa before the introduction of Islam, and the American civilizations, and any of the early river valley civilizations. They were all animistic. They worship nature spirits. So we're looking, when I look to see what these things have in common, I see nature is common to all of them, and so I'm looking for an answer that has something to do with that. Okay, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity share a belief in. So all three of these came out of the region of the Middle East, but they're asking for them to share a belief. And I know that all of them only worship one God. So I'd like to look for an answer that has something to do with worshiping one God. And then finally, number 4, which religion includes the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and Nirvana? Now, one of the things you're going to find about questions on religions is that most of them are kind of like matching questions. Like, the way this one doesn't really ask you to know what the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and Nirvana are, but just which religion do they match with. And so you want to, when you're studying, make sure that you can match important vocabulary to the religions, and then move forward to be able to understand what they mean. In this case, these all have to do with Buddhism, as its teachings on how to reach enlightenment. All right, we're going to move on to our document. This document really focuses on the effects of religion. So not so much the beliefs, but the effects of those beliefs on a particular place and time. And it says, Muslims had practical reasons for supporting the advancements of science. So we know Muslims are followers of Islam. So we're looking at the religion of Islam. Rulers wanted qualified physicians treating their ills. The faithful relied on mathematicians and astronomy to calculate the times for prayer and the direction of Mecca. Because astronomy, they needed to know the time of the day and where Mecca was to fulfill the 5 pillars. So that was important. Astronomy was important for that reason. Their attitude reflected a deep-seated curiosity about the world and a quest for truth that reached back as far as Muhammad himself. Muhammad was the founder. So they're saying that, from the very beginning, Muslims were interested in science, and that those studies could help them practice their religion. After the fall of Rome in 476 BCE, Europe entered a period of upheaval and chaos, an era in which scholarship suffered. So this is kind of a shift here. You want to be aware of that, is that we know earlier in the paragraph we were talking about Muslims and Mecca and really the region of the Middle East or Southwest Asia. And now our paragraph has shifted to be talking about Europe. And so in your head, these all go together, but we need to keep reading to figure out how. Europe entered a period of upheaval and chaos, an era in which scholarship suffered. And this is referring to the Dark Ages, those Middle Ages when things fell apart after Rome fell. In the early 800s, Caliph al-Ma'mun opened in Baghdad the House of Wisdom. There, scholars of different cultures and beliefs worked translating texts from Greece, India, Persia, and elsewhere into Arabic. So now we're switching back to the Muslims. So this can be a little bit confusing because of that bouncing around geographically in the source. But what this is trying to tell you is up here, so we're getting out of this area, is that science was always important to Muslims. Down here in the second paragraph, okay, so there was a period of time where Europe was not able to do those studies, so Muslims are going to carry that on. And you can see them doing that by translating the texts. So like this Greek idea, which the Europeans were in a dark age and they weren't studying, was carried on by the Muslims. Okay, so number 1 asks, what were the reasons for Muslims' interest in learning at this time in history? And I want to call your attention to this word reasons, because the S at the end means more than one, right? So you're going to need answers, more than one answer. You're going to have at least 2 reasons for the Muslims' interest in learning. And in my mind, those really come out of the first paragraph. And so we see here, if we're looking for answers, the rulers wanted qualified physicians when they were sick, so they wanted good doctors. People needed the math and astronomy to calculate the times for prayer and the direction of Mecca. And so those are good reasons for why people were interested in learning so much at the time. Okay, now what can I add here for my outside information? So when I'm looking at the outside information, we did some annotating that provides some of that. So things like the 5 pillars, Dark Ages, Muhammad being the founder, all of that could count as outside information. You could also talk about, you could name specific 5 pillars. You could also name other technologies that came out of the House of Wisdom. So the House of Wisdom is mentioned here as a place where text was translated, which it was, but there were other technologies like the Astrolab that came out of the House of Wisdom that you could also focus on. So you could name other achievements. Okay, and the last piece, I won't scroll down, but the last piece is about making a connection to something that you're learning in class. In my mind, in terms of a connection, you could connect this to other golden ages. So this really describes a great golden age in Muslim history with new learning, right? So new technologies, new learning is always a sign of a golden age. So you could connect it to other golden ages. Please remember to describe the golden age here and the one that you're referencing. That's how you show that connection. How do they go together? You could also talk about technologies that are being developed during the time period that you're studying. And you could also discuss another example of religion's influence. So this is pretty clearly religion influencing technology, but you might be studying something where religion or philosophy influenced another time. For example, the use of the Confucian-based civil service system in Han, Sung, or Ming China would be great examples of religious influence that you could then connect back to the source. Thank you, everybody.